Hi, I'm Debi Peverill, and you're listening to one of a series of posts we're doing about pricing and profitability. Today I'm talking about fixed costs, and I often say that fixed costs are the devil, because when you get a fixed cost, you're stuck with it no matter what happens. And that's the definition of a fixed cost. It stays the same. Our typical examples are things like rent, insurance, loan payments, anything where there's no change in what you're paying if you're busier or not busier. So, rent's classic. If you rent a business operation and no customers come to your business operation, you're still paying the same rent. If all kinds of people come to your business operation, you're still paying the same rent. So it can be a real issue when you have just, revenue disturbances, when you can't get enough customers, or if something happens to close the business down. So, my COVID example, 2 different restaurants. Asaf was running one with a high amount of rent, and he had lots of loan payments. And of course, in spring of 2020, when a lot of places were closed down, his business was closed for 2 months, and he still had to pay rent, and he still had to pay his loan payments. And of course, there were government programs and all of that. But it was 6 months after the restaurant was up and running again before he had recovered from all of those costs that he had to pay while he was closed. Another restaurant owner, Nazem, he had a month-to-month lease. So when the public health closed him down, he canceled his lease, and he didn't have any loan payments. So 2 kinds of fixed costs he didn't have. So when things opened up again, he was making money almost immediately because he didn't have the fixed costs. And that's, an example that you can, take a look at. What if something happens where my business isn't able to generate any revenue? What costs will I still have? And those costs are generally the ones that are fixed. So we take on fixed costs carefully. And, I'm not saying fixed costs are entirely bad. If you're very busy, then a fixed cost is a good thing because it's not going to go up as you get busier. Where they are problematic is when you aren't very busy, when you're not seeing the revenue to support that. A variable cost, of course, is a cost that varies. And, if you're only paying rent when you're open, that's a variable cost. If you're only paying for gas when you drive, that's a variable cost. So those kinds of costs go away in times when there's not much activity. During the early days of COVID, when, most people were shut down, gas stations weren't getting a lot of revenue because people were not driving around. So it's a classic business decision whether you go with a fixed cost or a variable cost. Some of the examples we've seen, snow plowing, where I live, is every winter, it's a decision. Do you lock in a price and then whine if it doesn't snow? Or do you pay by the time and then whine if it snows a lot? And since you cannot predict how much it's going to snow, this is a cost that's not under your control at all. So the thing with the fixed costs is that sometimes we will fix a cost just to have the certainty. We know it won't be more than that. We know it won't be less than that. We're not gambling. We are just saying, here is the cost. No matter what happens, that's what we're going to pay. And if you're a fan of certainty, then it might be worth your while to lock in your costs rather than have everything be variable. But if you are more of a risk taker, and most business owners are, then you might be better off if you can make most of your costs variable, because then if you're not too busy, you're not going to have those costs. So, conclusion, think about it. In your situation, is it worth locking in a fixed cost in order to know exactly how much those costs are going to be?